At this point, I think he looked into like a lawyer or something, and he just didn't have a lot of recourse. Hey there, and welcome to Matt's Garage and Car Stories with Matt. This story dates back to about 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. And if you didn't know, my older brother is also very into cars. And at that time, he was obsessing a little bit on buying a Jeep. He really wanted like a YJ or TJ or something like that. And so he had been looking for over a month. He had been doing all the research, reading all the Jeep magazines, everything he could find about Jeeps, trying to find the common problems, all that stuff so that he'd get a good deal. And so he found this really clean looking white 1994 Jeep YJ on a car lot in Saskatoon. And he went there and looked it over really good. Like he spent hours, he lifted the carpets up, checked over everything you could check when you're buying a car, and thought he got a really good deal. Drove this car back to my parents for the weekend. And we even took it out and did a little light wheeling around the lake and stuff. But one thing we were noticing over the weekend is it seemed to be little notchy, little tough shifting. My brother hadn't noticed this when he picked it up, but seemed to be progressing and getting worse and worse. And so by the time he went to go back to the city after the weekend was over, he could barely get this thing to shift through the gears. And so he found out that it was this was the year that they had put like a Peugeot transmission in, and it was common for the slave cylinders to fail or whatever. And so that's what had happened with this. And so initially he was going to get them to fix that, but then the engine sprung a coolant leak. And I'm not sure where even. I think that there was this coolant pooling in the top of the engine somewhere. And then at the same time, one of the axle seals went out on it and was dripping out onto the brakes. And so it had all these problems. And then also, he had brought it to work a couple times by this point. And somebody at work actually recognized the vehicle, knew the previous owner, and knew that it had been mudded really seriously. The guy had apparently taken it out every weekend, mudding type thing. So even though it looked really clean, it had been abused really badly. And so he decided he didn't really want the Jeep at this point. So he took it back and basically complained to the dealer and said, you got to give me my money back. This is not what I want at all. And so they said, well, we don't give money back, but you're welcome to exchange it for another vehicle of similar value or greater out on our lot. So my brother goes out onto the lot and he finds 93 Crown Victoria. And he kind of liked Crown Victorias. He had owned a bit older one before that. So he decided to go with that because Crown Victorias are kind of bulletproof. Seemed like a pretty safe bet. So, same thing. He looked the car over pretty decent and test drove it and everything. And made the deal, signed all the paperwork, brought the car home again for the weekend to my parents. This was the following weekend by now. And my dad and I are kind of standing in the driveway looking it over. That's what we do when one of us buys a car. The other one has to find all the flaws in it, So we're walking around it looking for problems and stuff. And we get looking at the back end of it, and none of the body lines line up like the gaps around the trunk lid. Trunk lid's sitting all crooked in there. So we open up the trunk and pull back the trunk carpeting, and you could see where it had all been crushed in. It had been rear-ended really hard and not fixed properly at all. It was all full of crinkles and stuff all under the carpet. And then my brother's checking around under the hood and notices that the oil's like really low, like off the stick. And so he adds a bunch of oil to it, gets it back on the full mark, drives it back to Saskatoon, and the same thing, the oil's down off the stick again. That's only like an hour and a half drive, so he again returns to the car lot on Monday, and he's like, this car, burns a ton of oil, and it's been in a bad accident. And they're like, some cars are like that. And he's like, what do you mean some cars are like that? This is a $10,000 car you just sold me, and it's completely screwed. And they're like, well, same thing. If you're unhappy with the car, we can't offer you any money back, but you can go out on the lot and see if there's anything else that interests you. So he goes back out on the lot, and he finds this early 90s Ford F-150 with the 300 inline six in it, the bulletproof engine. So he tells them he wants to take it home for the day but not sign anything. So they let him do that, and he drove it around for the day, and it seemed like a good enough truck, but it was really hard on gas. So he decided that wasn't going to work. So he returns back there again, thinking he can choose another car off the lot. Well, when he got back there, they're like, you've caused us so much trouble now. If you're going to choose another car off the lot, you're going to have to spend some money. You're going to have to give us a couple thousand extra. So, at this point, I think he looked into like a lawyer or something, and he just didn't have a lot of recourse. So he went out on the lot, and he found this 99 Suzuki Swift, and it was basically the newest car on their lot at the time. It was like 2 years old. It had like 15,000 kilometers on it. This car was pretty well brand new, had a 5-speed in it. So he's just was so sick of dealing with car problems, he just got that car thinking it was pretty much a brand new car, so it wouldn't be any trouble. And I think they made him pay either 12 or 14,000 for it. They made him pay quite a lot more than the car was worth. I think it was like maybe a $9,000 or $10,000 car at the time, and they made him pay well over market value for this car. So of course he wasn't happy, but he had a car, and that car turned out to be one of the greatest cars ever. He ended up driving it. He drove really aggressively back then, and had the 5-speed in it, and he used to just rev this car and there'd be like a whistle through the intake, and the car would be heating up. He'd be revving it so high. He used to just hold it at red line all the time and stuff, and blow by faster cars on the street and stuff, because he just didn't even seem to care about this car. But it took all the abuse. I remember finally one day we're driving, and the car started making this horrible squealing sound, and so he took it to the Suzuki dealer, which they no longer have those in Canada, but at the time Suzuki was still around. So he takes it to the Suzuki dealer and tells them about the squealing noise, and he's like, I've been driving the car for over a year and haven't really done anything or looked at it, so just look it all over and let me know if there's anything else that needs attention. So they take it in, and I'm like giggling, because I'm like, oh, your car is probably screwed. They're gonna charge you big time. And so I happen to be with them when we go back and pick it up, and the bill was like under $100. And they said, yeah, all your car needed was front brake pads. They were riding on the squealers, but the rotors were perfect. So we just put pads in, and they said, we checked over the rest of your car and can't find anything wrong with it. Seems perfect. So anyways, he had this car almost 3 years, and he took all these long trips in it. I remember him telling me the story about driving through the mountains in BC, and he lost control of the car on an icy corner doing about 85 miles an hour, and spun the car out, and there was a roadside turnout, like a rest stop there with some garbage cans and stuff, and he swears that he slid the car into there, spun it out a bunch of times through that area, and regained control within the rest area and re-entered the road without losing too much speed and just kept on going. And that's kind of how he drove that car. And finally, him and he actually got married in the meantime and everything while he owned this car. So him and his then new wife, they went down to Arizona in it to visit my granny, who was like a snowbird. She was living there in the winter. So they went down there and spent a few weeks there, and it turned out that he rear-ended somebody in low-speed traffic because just like me, my brother has size 13 shoes. And I know myself because I drove that car a few times while he owned it. My feet would always get caught under the edge of the dashboard. You really couldn't effectively get to the clutch pedal in a timely manner. And so that's what happened is he was actually trying to get on the clutch and the brake, and his foot got hung up in the dash, and his other foot slipped and hit the gas, and he went straight into the back of a Trailblazer at full throttle, and airbags went off, and pretty well folded up the front of the car like an accordion, and that was it. Nobody was hurt, but the car was done for. So he ended up flying back to Canada and had to buy another car. I can't even remember what his next vehicle was after that, but I don't think he's ever owned a car as good as that car. Like I remember another time we took this trip to Regina, from Saskatoon to Regina, and I don't think we went under like 90 mile an hour the whole way. He was up over 100 mile an hour for a lot of that trip. And I remember the temperature gauge kept climbing, and he'd have to back off for a bit, let the car cool off. I mean, that was a pretty amazing little car. I do hope you enjoyed this car story with Matt. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourself a great day.